Today we are going to cover two things on bonds, especially the November bonds. One is that the government is buying back bonds, and some of you have concerns that the government might default. And two, we're going to have a look at November bonds in case you are interested in investing there. We're going to be doing some calculations in terms of how much you should expect to receive, in terms of how much you should expect to pay for these bonds. Now, to the former, some of you have raised concerns about the government defaulting because they have issued a buyback. By that we mean that if you had invested in FXD 2023-003, this is a bond that was issued back in 2023. It was supposed to go for 3 years. You're supposed to get back your money, assuming that you had invested 1M in this bond. Back then in 2023, you were expecting to receive your 1 million back in May 2026. But the government has told you, or the government has told us as investors, as lenders, that you don't have to wait until May 2026 to get back your money. You can get back your money in November 2025. So why would the government do that? The main reason is debt restructuring. I had a look at any bonds that were maturing during that month, during that period, and I came across another bond, FXD1. Rather, it's an infrastructure bond, so it's IFB1 2026. This is a bond that was issued back in 2020. It was supposed to go for 6 years, and you were supposed to get back your investment, your money, in May 2026. So you can see there are two bonds that are going to mature within the same month. In fact, they are like 1 week apart. So you can see why the government is targeting 30 billion from the 76.5 billion of just that one bond that they are issuing a buyback. But you might agree with me that the debts in this country are increasing. And let me just show you the numbers just to put everything into perspective, because it makes sense why the government would want to offload some of these debts at a different period in time when they don't have the pressure to pay back these loans. You can see that in August 2025, that is this year, our debts are equivalent to 11.97 trillion, which is 67.4% of what our country produces. In January 2024, it was 11.2 trillion. In 2022, it was 8.6 trillion. And in 2021, it was 8.06 trillion. In fact, when you go down up to 2019, you'll see that the number was smaller than this. So the reality is the government has a lot of debts to pay. And in fact, this number is increasing. So now the government has to figure out a way that they can ease off the pressure they have. Instead of paying a huge lump sum at a certain point in time, why not just focus on paying back during different times? And this is the second time that the government is doing a buyback. The first buyback happened this year in 2025, in Feb 2025 this year, when they were targeting 50 billion, which investors willingly received. So, I mean, it's a reality that we have to accept that this is what the government might do in the near future. But I view this as not necessarily us defaulting, but us making sure, putting in measures to ensure that we don't default. That's how I view this. One last thing that I forgot to mention is that if you had invested your money here, you're only going to get it back, or you are eligible to getting this money back earlier on if it's not attached to any loan, because you can actually take a loan against your bond. Again, in terms of debt restructuring, if you have been looking at some of these bonds this year, you've noticed that the government hasn't issued any short-term bonds, at least of the ones that I know of, and I stand to be corrected. You see, back then they would issue a 3-year bond, a 2-year bond, but now, since the beginning of this year, they've been focusing on long-term bonds, 14 years, 15 years, 11 years. And in fact, the shortest bond that I have seen so far, I stand to be corrected, is the one that is being issued this month rather, and it's for 7 years. That's the shortest that I have seen. Of course, it's a reopened bond. So the government is mainly focusing, or the government intends to focus on long-term bonds, because if you delay the repayment and you just redistribute the repayments, it makes it easier to pay off debts. What do you think? There are two bonds that have been issued for November. You have until 5th November to submit the to express your interest in this bond. So let me just summarize all this in a table. The first bond, FXD1 2012-020, is going to go for 7 years. Your money is going to be locked for 7 years. The coupon rate, that is the guaranteed return on your investment, is 12%. The tax is 10%. Interest paid is semi-annually. So if you are going to invest 1M, it's very simple. You just divide the interest rate, which is 12%, by 2, because you receive interest every 6 months. So you're going to receive 6% times the 1 million, which is 60,000. But you have to pay 10% as tax. So when you take away the tax, you are guaranteed of receiving 54,000 shillings. Now, if you multiply that times 2, just to have the annual return, to know how much you're going to make from this as an annual return, you're going to receive 108,000 net. This is money that is going to be hitting, money that is going to hit your bank account. Now, that is in terms of how much you're going to receive, and it's guaranteed. In terms of how much you're going to pay for this bond, it's usually not guaranteed. You never know how much you're going to pay for this bond after everybody has expressed their interest on how much they should pay for this bond. So investors who invest 2 million shillings and above have an opportunity to tell Treasury that I want to pay this amount for this bond. So if everybody expresses their interest, they do an average, a weighted average of how much you'd expect to pay for this bond, and that's what you get. So we don't know how much it is, but what I want to say is that you can give the government 1M, you can give them less than 1M, so something like 970,000, or you can give them something extra on top, something like 1.1M. This bond doesn't have any accrued interest, so we are good. Now, for the second bond, it's going to go for 11.4 years. This one is longer than the first one, just slightly longer than the first one. The return is going to be 13.942%, which is higher than the first one. So you might want to go for this. And by the way, most investors look at the interest rate. They don't look at the longevity. They do look at the longevity, but some prefer a higher interest rate regardless of how long this bond is going to go for. This bond has something known as accrued interest of 0.8043 for 100 shillings. This is what that means. Interest is received every 6 months. But because this bond was opened before and it has to follow a specific schedule of payment, you are going to receive a certain interest that you don't deserve. Because if you're going to invest in this bond, it might, okay, let me just look at it. It might go for 5 months instead of 6 months, but you receive interest worth of 6 months. So that 1 month that you don't deserve is known as accrued interest. You have to pay it back when you're paying for the bond. That's just an example. So this is interest that you don't deserve, but you're going to receive anyway. You have to pay it back. In terms of how much you're going to receive, it's 13.942%. You divide that by 2 because you're going to be receiving interest twice a year. You're going to be receiving 69,710 every year, but you have to take away 10% as tax. So you're going to be receiving 62,739 every 6 months. For the whole year, times 2, you're going to be receiving 125,478. So that's just it. It's very simple. It's a simple line calculation. In terms of how much you're going to pay for this bond, we don't know. You might pay a higher amount. You might pay a lower amount than the 1M that you're investing. Yeah, but you have to pay that amount plus the interest that you don't deserve, but you're going to receive.